My Nana phoned me past midnight, her voice trembling. Don't return home. Leave now. I asked why. She only begged, trust me. I obeyed instantly. Police cruisers flooded my block. Julian, don't return to your place tonight. It's unsafe. Nana Alara's quivering voice crackled through the receiver. I froze in the parking lot, my pulse hammering. She had never called me at this hour, certainly not with such stark fear. I tried to press for details, but she only repeated, trust me. Find somewhere else to stay now, before disconnecting. Heeding her urgent counsel, I drove to a friend's house nearby. Less than an hour later, the piercing wail of fire engines and patrol cars tore through the night. From a distance, I stood paralyzed, watching my home, the sanctuary I had poured my life's efforts into, filled with countless memories, consumed by a roaring inferno. I stumbled out onto the icy pavement, barefoot, as the fire devoured everything I owned. One name echoed in my mind, Caleb, my volatile younger brother, whom I had refused to loan money to that very afternoon. No concrete proof, just an overwhelming surge of fiery rage. I sped to my parents' residence, where he still lived off their generosity, determined to confront him. As always, they shielded him. My mother, Martha's, voice was gentle yet cutting. Don't make a big deal out of this. Family comes first. But this time, I swore I wouldn't let it go. My name is Julian Reed. I'm 35, an electrical engineer based in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I'm not typically one to voice complaints, but if you ask, I'll give it to you straight. My life often feels like a book with a poorly constructed plot. I'm the eldest, always the one shouldering the heaviest burdens, consistently making sacrifices without ever receiving recognition. My family, or what passes for one, is a chaotic tangle of favoritism, injustice, and deep-seated wounds that refuse to heal. My father, Arthur, a retired welder, is the quintessential patriarch. He constantly boasts about his glory days, yet remains utterly blind to the flaws of his youngest son. To him, Caleb could wreak havoc on the world and still be the vulnerable boy who needs unwavering protection. My mother, Martha, a former nurse now working as a school nurse. Lighter work, she claims, to care for Nana Alara, is emotional and easily swayed by Arthur and Caleb. Whenever I attempted to discuss the unfairness at home, she'd sigh, Caleb's still young. He needs more help than you. From childhood, Caleb was thoroughly indulged. I recall instances when Martha bought him new shoes while I wore worn-out ones, or when Arthur patted his shoulder for kicking a soccer ball while I, at 16, began working part-time to help support the household. Caleb is aggressive, self-centered, and utterly ungrateful. Every time he caused trouble, fights, mounting debts, or drunken outbursts, my parents found ways to blame circumstances, society, even me, but never him. The sole person in my family who consistently stood by me was Nana Alara. She's over 80, frail, and confined to a wheelchair, yet her mind is as sharp as a razor. She lives with my parents since my grandfather passed away, and though she never explicitly states it, I know she comprehends the injustice I've endured. On summer afternoons when I was a child, she would pull me onto her lap and recount stories about my grandfather, whom she insisted I resembled, hardworking, patient, and always prioritizing family. You're my pride, she would say, though I never truly felt worthy. She is my lighthouse, the solitary beacon in my darkest hours. Our family resides in a middle-class Milwaukee neighborhood where everyone knows each other but largely respects boundaries. My home, a few miles from my parents, was modest but the culmination of years of relentless effort. I cherished that house, not merely because it was mine, but because it offered an escape from my family's shadow, a place where I could truly be myself. But Caleb, consumed by jealousy and resentment, obliterated it all in one night. The friction between Caleb and me isn't new. It's been a smoldering fire since our childhood. I remember having to relinquish toys, better food, even the praise I rightfully earned. When I graduated college with an engineering degree, Arthur simply nodded. Good, but don't get arrogant. Yet when Caleb dropped out, they consoled him. He'll discover his own path. His path, however, led to gambling, heavy drinking, and repeatedly calling me to beg for money. I tried to be a good older brother. I gave Caleb money countless times, fully aware he'd squander it at casinos or bars. I harbored a foolish hope that one day he would change, mature, and see me as something other than an adversary. But each time I helped, he took it for granted, even sneering. Big brothers always have cash, huh? I'm not wealthy. I merely work myself to the bone to achieve a stable life. That afternoon, he materialized at my doorstep, face flushed, eyes wild, demanding a few $1,000s for some alleged new project. I knew his project was gambling debts, the same destructive cycle I'd foolishly funded before. I met his gaze and declared, "No, Caleb, not this time." His face darkened, his lips curling into a snarl. "You'll regret this, Julian," he growled before slamming the door and storming away. I was accustomed to his temper, but there was something different in his eyes that day, like a cornered animal. I never imagined his threat would materialize so swiftly. That afternoon, the air was bitterly cold, the kind of late autumn Wisconsin chill that pierced my thin jacket. I had just returned from work, utterly exhausted after a demanding shift at a construction site, inspecting electrical systems for a new building. My modest house, nestled at the end of a quiet street adorned with vibrant red maple trees, was my sanctuary of peace. But that day, that peace shattered when Caleb appeared. He pounded on the door hard enough to make it rattle. I opened it to find him standing there, his hoodie disheveled, hair a mess, and the faint scent of alcohol clinging to him. "Bro, lend me some cash. I've got a project," he said, his tone casual, as if he were simply asking for the time. I sighed and began to close the door, but he jammed his hand against it, shoving it open. "Don't act so high and mighty, Julian. I need money now." "What kind of project demands money every single time?" I asked, striving to keep my voice steady. I'd heard this line a dozen times. New project, big opportunity. But it invariably ended with Caleb vanishing for weeks, only to resurface buried in debt. He smirked, stepping inside uninvited, and plopped onto my sofa as if it were his own home. "You don't need to know. Just give me the money." I stood there, my fists clenched, battling the rising anger within me. The small room suddenly felt stifling. The mementos on my shelf, the photo of me and my grandfather fishing, the engineering degree I proudly displayed, reminded me of everything I'd sacrificed to get to this point. And Caleb, my younger brother, who never appreciated anything, expected me to keep handing him everything. "No, Caleb," I said firmly, "not this time. How many times have I helped you? What do you do with the money gambling? Booze. Do you think I'm a bank?" His face darkened. He shot to his feet, pointing at my face. "Who do you think you are, Julian? The great big brother? You've got a house, a job, and I've got nothing. If you don't help me, don't blame me for what happens." His voice roared, echoing through my small house. I saw a neighbor across the street peek out, but I didn't care. I just stared into his eyes, searching for a trace of the brother I once loved, but all I found was resentment. "Get out of my house," I said, my voice cold. Caleb growled, kicking the leg of the table before storming out, the door slamming shut behind him. I stood there, my heart pounding, feeling like I'd just survived a battle, but I didn't know the real battle was still ahead. After Caleb left, I sank onto the sofa, my hands trembling. I wasn't afraid of him, but the way he looked at me sent a chill down my spine. I knew he was volatile, knew he'd gotten into bar fights and been arrested for causing trouble, but setting my house on fire? I never thought he'd go that far. I reached for my phone to call Martha, but stopped. What would she say? "Caleb's just struggling." Don't blame him. Arthur would tell me, "As the older brother, you need to be forgiving." I'd heard those words my whole life, and each time they made me feel smaller in my own family. I decided not to call. Instead, I cracked open a beer and stared out the window. Night fell, the dim yellow streetlights illuminating the scattered maple leaves. I thought back to when we were kids, when Caleb and I used to play together. Once I gave him my brand new bike, even though I'd worked an extra month to buy it. He grinned, calling me the best big brother. But that smile was long gone, replaced by jealousy, resentment, and unreasonable demands. My phone buzzed, snapping me out of my memories. It was Martha. I hesitated but answered. "Julian, what did you do to make Caleb so upset?" Her voice was full of reproach, as if I were the one causing trouble. "He called me, said you didn't help him at all. You're his older brother. Why don't you care about him?" I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. "Martha, how many times have I helped him? Every time he promises to change, but what happens? He throws the money away on gambling, on alcohol. I can't keep doing this." She sighed over the phone. The same sigh I'd heard 100 times. "Caleb's had a hard life, Julian. He's not like you. You have to help him." I wanted to scream, to tell her I'd had a hard life, too. That I'd sacrificed my youth to support the family. But I stayed silent. "I'm tired, Martha," I said, then hung up. Arthur called right after Martha hung up. "Julian, don't be stubborn," he said, his voice sharp like he was giving an order. "Caleb's your brother. He's struggling. And if you don't help, who will? Family comes first. Don't let a small issue tear us apart." I almost laughed, but it was a bitter laugh. A small issue? I'd given him money countless times. My hard-earned savings, only for him to squander it on gambling and alcohol. I didn't respond, just hung up, feeling like my heart had been squeezed tight. I tossed the phone onto the sofa, pacing back and forth, trying to shake off the burning anger in my chest. Outside, the late autumn Wisconsin cold seeped through the window cracks, making me shiver. The vibrant red maple leaves fell scattered under the streetlights like a warning of something looming. I opened the back door to the yard, letting the cold air hit my face, hoping it would cool the fire in my head. But the image of Caleb, with his hateful glare as he stormed off, kept replaying vividly. "You'll regret this, Julian," he had said. I knew my younger brother had a volatile temper from childhood. He often threatened me whenever I did something he didn't like. But threats were one thing, acting on them was another. I told myself I was probably overthinking it. Caleb was just angry like always. He'd cool off, come back begging for money, and I'd have to wrestle with myself to say no again. I returned to the sofa, picking up the now cold can of beer, trying to force myself to relax. But my mind was a mess. I thought of Nana Alara, the only one in the family who always saw the injustice I endured. "When I was a kid," she'd said, "you're strong, Julian, but being strong doesn't mean you have to endure forever." Her words were like a lighthouse guiding me through dark days. I wanted to call her, to tell her about today, but it was late, and I didn't want to worry her. The next morning, I dragged myself to work, my mind heavy as lead. I barely slept, haunted by Caleb's threats spinning in my head. The engineering office was noisier than usual with the hum of the printer and colleagues discussing a new project, but it all felt like a foggy haze. I sat at my computer staring at circuit diagrams, unable to focus. The numbers and wires were as tangled as my life right now. A colleague, Serena, patted my shoulder and asked, "Julian, you okay? You look like you've seen a ghost." I forced a smile, shaking my head. "Yeah, just tired." But deep down, I knew this exhaustion wasn't from work. It was from wounds my family refused to acknowledge. After work, I stepped into the parking lot, the evening chill biting my skin. Just then, my phone buzzed, snapping me out of my thoughts. Nana Alara's name lit up the screen. My heart raced, a bad feeling rising. I answered, my voice shaky. "Nana, what's wrong?" "Julian, don't go home. It's dangerous." Her voice was frail, trembling as if she were holding back fear. My blood ran cold. "Nana, what's happening? Did Caleb do something?" I asked, panic creeping in, but she only repeated more urgently, "Trust me, Julian, go somewhere else now. Don't go home tonight." Then she hung up, leaving no chance for me to ask more. I stood frozen, gripping the phone, my mind reeling. Nana Alara wasn't one to panic. If she said it was dangerous, something was seriously wrong. But what? Caleb? Had he done something crazy? I wanted to call back to get answers, but her voice echoed in my head, urgent and commanding. I knew I had to listen. I texted Owen, a close colleague who lived a few blocks away. "Can I crash at your place tonight?" I typed quickly, my heart pounding. Owen replied instantly, "Come over, bro. My door's always open." I grabbed nothing but my car keys and phone, jumped into the car, and drove off into the night. Milwaukee's quiet streets passed by outside the window, the dim streetlights casting an eerie glow as if telling a story I didn't yet understand. I tried to stay calm, but the unease clung to me like a shadow lurking nearby. When I got to Owen's, he opened the door, his hair disheveled, eyes still sleepy. "What's got you wandering around at this hour?" he asked, his tone teasing but concerned. I shook my head. "Family stuff. I need a place to crash." Owen didn't press further, just patted my shoulder and led me into his small apartment. The faint smell of brewed coffee filled the air, and the cozy room had an old sofa in the corner. "Rest up. We'll figure it out tomorrow," he said, then headed back to his bedroom, leaving me alone in the living room. I lay on the sofa, but couldn't sleep. Nana Alara's voice echoed like a prophecy. I glanced at the clock, nearly 1 a.m. I tried to imagine what could have scared her so much. Caleb, what could he do? Trash my house? Or was it just an empty threat like always? I told myself I was probably blowing things out of proportion. Maybe Nana was just overly worried. But deep down, I knew she wouldn't say something like that without reason. I lay tossing and turning on Owen's old, creaky sofa. The faint aroma of drip coffee wafting from the kitchen wasn't enough to soothe my restless mind. The street light filtered through the curtains, casting hazy streaks of light across the ceiling, as if telling a story I couldn't yet fully grasp. Nana Alara's trembling, urgent voice lingered in my head, making it impossible to shake the gnawing sense of unease. I closed my eyes, trying to force myself to sleep. But every time I did, I saw my house. The house I'd poured sweat and tears into buying. The one filled with countless memories. The photo of me with my grandfather. The chair I'd built with my own hands. The worn-out engineering book I'd read over and over. These small things were my entire world. The thought that Caleb might do something to destroy it made my heart clench. I told myself, no, he wouldn't dare. He's aggressive, but not insane. Or had I underestimated him? Then, like a knife slicing through the night, the piercing wail of fire trucks and police sirens shattered the silence, sharp and relentless. The sound, like a terrifying symphony, jolted me upright, my heart pounding wildly. I rushed to the window, yanking the curtains aside. In the distance, red and blue lights flashed, illuminating the entire neighborhood. Black smoke billowed high, mingling with the fierce red glow of flames. A chilling dread shot down my spine as I realized it was my neighborhood. My house was on fire. I bolted out of Owen's house, barefoot on the icy sidewalk, running toward the blaze. The late autumn Milwaukee wind stung my face, but I felt nothing except fear and a rising tide of anger. When I arrived, I stood frozen, paralyzed. The flames devoured my house with ferocious hunger, black smoke swirling like a monstrous beast. The acrid stench of gasoline assaulted my nose, burning my eyes. Firefighters shouted. Hoses sprayed torrents of water, but the fire refused to yield. The front door where I'd stood, greeting Caleb just that afternoon, was now nothing but a charred, warped frame buckling under the heat. Neighbors gathered, some recognizing me and whispering among themselves. "Julian, thank God you weren't inside," one said softly, their voice tinged with pity. Mrs. Albright, the elderly woman next door, gripped my hand tightly, her eyes red and teary. I heard a strange noise, then saw the smoke. I called 911 right away, but the fire spread so fast. I nodded, my throat too tight to speak. Nana Lara's voice echoed in my mind. "Don't go home, Julian. It's too dangerous." But if I hadn't listened to her, if I'd been inside, I shuddered, unable to finish the thought. I stood there, my heart tearing apart, watching the savage flames roar, consuming the house. The world I'd poured my sweat and tears into building. The photo of me and my grandfather by Lake Michigan. The wooden chair I'd painstakingly crafted piece by piece. The dog-eared engineering book I'd read countless times. All of it was vanishing into the black smoke and crimson flames. Each crackle, each piece of debris falling, felt like a knife stabbing into my chest. But the deepest pain wasn't the loss of a house. It was the raw, brutal betrayal inflicted by my own flesh and blood. I knew Caleb did this. I didn't need proof to feel his hatred in every flicker of the flames, as if the fire itself was him, ruthless, unrelenting. The choking smell of gasoline mingled with his threat from earlier. "You'll regret this, Julian." It all formed a horrifying picture, a nightmare I couldn't wake from. A firefighter, his face smeared with soot, grabbed my shoulder and pulled me back. "Hey, it's too dangerous." "Stay back," he shouted, his voice cutting through the fire's roar. I wanted to scream, to charge into the inferno, to claw back even a single fragment of my memories from the flames' cruel grip. But the firefighter stood like a wall between me and my burning home. My body froze, but my heart raced, and my eyes stung. Whether from the smoke or the agony tearing through my chest, I couldn't tell. The police cordoned off the area, their red and blue lights flashing in my eyes, mocking my helplessness, taunting a 35-year-old man watching his entire life turn to ash. I stumbled back to my car, my hands trembling as I held my phone, my fingers hovering over the screen, but too afraid to dial. I wanted to call Nana Lara, to scream that she'd saved me, that I was alive because of her. But my throat was so tight, it felt like someone was strangling me. Tears welled up, hot and heavy, but I bit my lip, holding them back. I couldn't cry. Nana Lara always said I was strong, but in this moment, I was just a lost child, abandoned amidst the ruins of my own world. Anger, pain, and betrayal wrapped around me like the black smoke clinging to every breath I took. As the flames were temporarily brought under control, their fierce red glow gave way to thick, suffocating black smoke. Firefighters, drenched in sweat, waded through the smoldering debris, inspecting the charred remnants. The police had cordoned off the area, their red and blue lights flashing across the stunned faces of neighbors. I stood there, far from the ruins of my house, yet I could still feel the heat of the fire as if it were licking at my skin. A man in a reflective jacket, his face stern, approached me. He introduced himself as Detective Miller, a fire investigator. His voice was low and professional, but his eyes were sharp, as if they could pierce through to my very soul. "You're the homeowner, right, Julian?" he asked, flipping open a small notebook, pen poised to write. I nodded, my mouth dry. "Yes, that's me." Detective Miller studied me, his gaze probing. "Did you leave the stove or any candles on?" I shook my head, trying to keep my voice steady. No, I didn't leave anything on. Was anyone else in the house? He pressed, his pen scratching across the paper. I live alone, I replied, each word feeling like a stab to the chest. I wasn't home tonight. Detective Miller's brow furrowed as he jotted down more notes. Not home. Why not? I hesitated, Nana Alara's image flashing in my mind, her trembling voice on the phone. Don't go home, Julian. It's too dangerous. I took a deep breath and said, My grandmother called me, warned me not to go home. She said there was danger. I didn't dare say more. Didn't dare utter Caleb's name, though it burned in my mind. Suspecting something was one thing, accusing without proof was another. I didn't want to look like a crazed man throwing blame around. Detective Miller paused his writing, staring at me intently. Warned you? Does anyone have a reason to want to harm you? His question hit me like a punch to the heart. Caleb. His name echoed in my head. I wanted to scream it, but I just stood there, swallowing the lump in my throat. I'm not sure, I said, my voice faltering, sounding like a coward. I knew the truth, but without evidence, I was just a man who'd lost everything, standing before the ashes of his life. Detective Miller nodded, his eyes still sharp as if he knew I was holding something back. All right, he said. We'll investigate. The smell of gasoline here is strong. This wasn't a natural fire. If you remember anything, call me. He handed me a business card and turned back to the scene where firefighters were still dousing stray embers in the wreckage. I stood there watching the glimmers of light flicker in the ashes like mocking eyes. The stench of gasoline clung to every breath, confirming what I'd known all along. Caleb did this. Not an accident, not fate, but his hatred ignited with gasoline and rage. Yet I had no proof, only the pain and anger boiling inside me like a volcano ready to erupt. I returned to my car, my hands trembling as I gripped my phone. I needed to talk to Nana Alara to know exactly what she'd seen, what she'd heard. I dialed her number, my heart pounding, and she answered after the first ring. Julian, are you okay? Her voice was frail but filled with worry, as if she'd been waiting for this call all night. I'm okay, thanks to you, I said, my voice choking, tears welling up again. My house, it's gone, Nana. Everything. It's all gone. I heard her gasp, as if she'd feared this but hoped it wouldn't come true. Nana, how did you know? What did Caleb do? I asked, my voice trembling, trying to stay calm, but my heart felt like it was breaking. She was silent for a moment, then spoke slowly, her voice steady. Tonight I saw him at the house. He was muttering, cursing you, saying you'd pay. I was nearby, pretending to sleep, but I heard every word. Then he called his friends, said something about buying gasoline. I wasn't sure, but my God, I couldn't let you be in danger, Julian. Her voice broke, as if she too was hurting from what was happening. I gripped the phone tightly, feeling as if the blood in my veins had stopped flowing. Gasoline. Caleb. The pieces fell into place, sharp as razors. Thank you, Nana, I said, my voice shaking, tears finally spilling down my cheeks. You saved me. I hung up, my hands trembling, my mind reeling. Nana Alara had seen the truth, had saved me from Caleb's deadly wrath. But the cost was my entire world, my house, my memories, all reduced to ash. The anger inside me was no longer just a flame. It was a storm sweeping away all reason. I slammed my foot on the gas, speeding toward my parents' house where Caleb was leeching off them. The familiar streets of Milwaukee blurred past the window, but they felt alien now, as if I no longer belonged here. The smell of gasoline still lingered in my nose, mingling with Nana Alara's words. He talked about buying gasoline. I gripped the steering wheel, my nails digging into my palms. I wanted to confront Caleb, to look into his eyes and force him to admit it. But deep down, I was afraid, not of him, but of my parents shielding him again, turning me into the family's villain. My parents' house was brightly lit, warm, a cruel contrast to the smoldering ruins of my life. I pushed the door open and stepped inside, my clothes still reeking of smoke, my eyes bloodshot from both rage and pain. Martha was in the living room, seated in an armchair with a cup of tea, and she jolted to her feet when she saw me. Julian, what are you doing here in the middle of the night? Her voice was frantic, her eyes scanning my disheveled appearance from my tousled hair to the smoke-stained jacket. Arthur appeared from the hallway, his shirt wrinkled, his face stunned. What's going on, Julian? Why do you look like this? He stepped closer, his voice tense, as if he could sense a storm brewing. I didn't answer, didn't stop. The fury guided me, and I stormed up the stairs, each step heavy with the weight of a lifetime of suppressed grievances. Caleb's room was at the end of the hallway, the room that used to be mine when I was a kid. I shoved the door open without knocking and saw him sprawled on the bed, phone in hand, the screen's glow illuminating his nonchalant face. "Did you pour gasoline and set my house on fire?" I growled, my hands clenched so tightly my knuckles turned white. My voice was icy, reverberating in the small room, an accusation that couldn't be taken back. Caleb looked up, smirking, his eyes mocking, though I caught a fleeting glimmer of panic. "Got any proof?" "Don't slander me," he said, his tone calm, but I knew he was acting. He knew. I knew. Martha rushed up the stairs, her face filled with alarm. "Julian, why are you yelling? What's going on?" She looked at me, then at Caleb, her eyes wavering as if she didn't want to believe something was wrong. Arthur appeared right behind her, arms crossed, his face stern as always when I dared to challenge the family's harmony. "What's going on?" "My house burned to the ground, Martha." My voice trembled with rage. "Everything I built, everything I had, is nothing but ashes now. And this guy..." I pointed at Caleb, my hand shaking. "He did it. I know he did." Caleb shot up, tossing his phone onto the bed. "You're crazy, Julian. You've got no proof, and you're blaming me." He stepped forward, face to face with me, his eyes bloodshot like a cornered animal. "You always think you're better than me, don't you? The perfect older brother. But what do you have? A house. Well, it's gone now." He sneered, his voice dripping with sarcasm, but I saw his hands tremble. He was scared. Martha stepped in, positioning herself between us, her hands gripping Caleb's shoulders as if he were a child needing protection. "Julian, calm down. You can't just accuse your brother like that. If the house burned, file an insurance claim. Don't make a big deal out of this. Our family's been through enough." Her voice faltered as if she were trying to convince herself that everything could still be salvaged. "Insurance!" I almost laughed, but it was a bitter, anguished laugh. "Martha, I lost everything. Not just the house, but my entire life. Did you even ask if I'm okay? Do you even care? Or are you just worried about protecting your precious son like always?" I pointed at Caleb, my voice breaking, no longer under control. "He burned my house, Martha." "I know he did. Nana Alara heard him talking about buying gasoline." Arthur stepped forward, his voice harsh, commanding, "That's enough, Julian. Stop causing trouble. Caleb is your brother. You have no proof, so don't make accusations. Family comes first. Don't let this tear us apart." He glared at me, his eyes cold, as if I were the traitor, the one disrupting the family's peace. I stood there feeling like the whole world was against me. Not a single word of comfort, not a single question about how I was doing. Just the same old shielding as always. But this time, I wouldn't stay silent. The anger, the pain, and years of being overlooked erupted inside me like the fire that had consumed my house. Family? What family, Arthur? The family that always pushes me aside? The family that covers for a brother who burned down his own siblings? House! I've sacrificed everything for this family, but no one ever noticed. No one ever cared. I shouted, my voice breaking with pain. Caleb smirked, stepping closer. "What do you know about sacrifice? All you do is show off, Julian. You had a house, a job while I had nothing. You didn't help me, and this is the consequence you have to face." His words were like an unspoken confession, and I saw Martha flinch, her eyes wavering. But she still held him tightly, as if letting go would reveal the truth. "The consequence I have to face?" I repeated, my voice dropping low, sharp as a blade. "You burned my house, Caleb. You poured gasoline, lit the match, and watched it burn. You think I don't know? Nana Alara heard you talking about the gasoline, about making me pay." I stepped closer, just a few feet from him, my eyes locked on his. I wanted him to admit it, to face the truth. Caleb stepped back, his eyes flickering with panic, but he quickly regained his mocking demeanor. "You're insane, Julian. You've got no proof at all, just a loser standing here screaming." But his voice trembled, and I knew I was getting to the truth. Martha burst into tears, her hands covering her face. "Julian, Caleb, stop it. Why are you two doing this? We're family." She looked at me, then at Caleb, her eyes pleading, but I couldn't stop. "Not now." Arthur stepped forward, placing a hand on Martha's shoulder, his gaze still cold and fixed on me. "Julian, go home. Don't make this worse. We'll deal with it later." But I knew his deal with it meant burying the truth as always. I shook my head, tears finally spilling. Not from weakness, but from a pain too immense to contain. "No, Arthur. This time I won't let it go." I turned and walked out of the room, Martha's voice calling after me, but I didn't look back. The anger inside me was no longer just a storm, it was a volcano ready to erupt. Each step I took was heavy, dragging the weight of a lifetime of being overlooked, betrayed. I couldn't stay in that house for another second. a place where the truth was buried under the guise of family. But I didn't leave right away. I walked down the familiar hallway past the family photos hanging on the wall, their fake smiles hiding years of injustice. Nana Alara's door was slightly ajar, a soft yellow light spilling out from within. I knocked gently. "Nana, it's me." "Come in, Julian." Nana Alara's voice was frail but warm, like a lighthouse guiding me through the darkness. I pushed the door open and saw her sitting in her wheelchair, her eyes lighting up when she saw me. The small room still carried the familiar scent of old wood and the lavender she loved, with the single bed, the quilt she'd knitted, and the family photos on the table all still there. I closed the door and sat on the wooden chair beside her bed, the same chair where I used to listen to her stories about Grandpa, about the tough times they'd overcome. But tonight, I wasn't that little boy anymore. I was a broken man, seeking solace from her amidst the storm. "I heard everything," she said, her voice trembling, her frail hands grasping mine. "You did the right thing, Julian. Don't let them weaken you. Caleb, he's gone too far." Her eyes gleamed with a deep pain, as if she were suffering alongside me. I bowed my head, tears welling up again, but I didn't want her to see me weak. "Nana, I've lost everything," I whispered, my voice breaking. "My house, my memories, all of it, because of him. And Martha and Arthur, they're still protecting him like always." I squeezed her hand, feeling the faint warmth from her trembling fingers. "I'm so tired, Nana. I don't know what to do anymore." My words were a confession, laying bare the wounds I'd hidden for years. Nana Alara patted my hand gently, her gaze steady, as if passing her strength to me. "You're not alone, Julian," she said, her voice slow but firm. "Your grandpa, if he were still here, would be so proud of you. You've always been strong, always sacrificed. But this time you have to fight. Not for the house, but for yourself." She reached into the small drawer beside her, pulling out an old, worn-edged photo. It was of me as a child, standing between her and Grandpa, beaming by Lake Michigan, the summer sun illuminating my carefree face. "We're always with you," she said, placing the photo in my hand. "Don't let Caleb take away who you are." I held the photo, my fingers tracing Grandpa's face, the man she always said I resembled, hardworking, patient, but never one to bow to injustice. Tears fell, soaking into the photo. But this time, I didn't hold them back. "I'll do it, Nana," I said, my voice trembling but resolute. "I won't let him win." She nodded, her eyes shining with pride, but also tinged with worry. "Go, Julian. Find your justice, but be careful." I stood, hugging her tightly, feeling her frail warmth as a final source of strength before stepping into the battle. I left the room, the photo in my pocket like a talisman. As I walked out of my parents' house, I didn't look back, though Martha's faint, desperate voice echoed from a distance. The anger still burned within me, but now it was laced with a cold determination. I thought of the years of being compared, overlooked, forced to yield to Caleb just because he was the baby. Flashing back to childhood, I saw myself again. A boy always trying to please my parents, striving to be the perfect older brother. I remembered giving Caleb the new bike I'd worked an extra month to buy just to see him grin and call me the best big brother. But that smile never lasted. I remembered Martha and Arthur buying him new shoes while I wore tattered ones. I remembered working part-time from age 16, bringing money home to help the family, while Caleb squandered cash, caused trouble, and was shielded by our parents. "He's still young," Martha always said, though he was only a few years younger than me. "You have to love your brother, Julian," Arthur always reminded, as if my love was never enough. Nana Alara's words had been my beacon through those dark days. "You're strong," she'd said when I sat with her, venting about being compared to Caleb. "But being strong doesn't mean you have to endure forever." Her words were etched in my mind, a reminder that I deserved to be seen, to be loved. But my parents never saw that. To them, Caleb was always the child to protect, while I was the one who had to sacrifice to carry the burden. Now, the burned-down house was the final straw. It wasn't just a house. It was a symbol of the years I'd poured sweat and tears into building, proving I could stand tall despite my family's lack of support. Caleb had torched it, and with it, my last shred of faith in the so-called family. But I wouldn't crumble. Nana Alara's words, the photo in my pocket, and years of enduring in silence now fueled a new fire, a fire of determination to reclaim justice. I drove back to Owen's place, my heart heavy, but my mind clearer than ever. It was late, but Milwaukee was still awake, the dim streetlights casting a yellowish glow on the empty streets. I parked in front of Owen's small apartment and knocked. He opened the door, looking at me with empathy. "You okay?" "Julian?" he asked, concern in his voice as he took in my state. smoke-stained clothes, bloodshot eyes, and a face etched with pain. Not okay, I replied, my voice hoarse, then recounted the fire, the confrontation with Caleb and my parents, and Nana Lara's words. Owen listened without interrupting, nodding, then clapped my shoulder. I know you're hurting, bro, but you need proof. If Caleb did this, you can't let emotions drag you down. I know someone who can help. I frowned, looking at him. Who? Investigator Marcus Bell, Owen said confidently. A private investigator well known in Milwaukee. He helped a friend of mine find evidence in a theft case. If anyone can dig up dirt on Caleb, it's Bell. Owen scrolled through his phone, pulled up a number, and handed it to me. Call him, but you need to stay calm. Don't let anger make you lose control. I nodded, taking the number, feeling a flicker of light in the darkness. Thanks, Owen, I said, my voice trembling. I don't know what I'd do without you. Owen gave a small smile, clapping my shoulder again. You're my brother, Julian. I'm always here. That night, I lay on Owen's sofa, staring at the ceiling. The photo of Nana, Lara, and Grandpa still in my pocket, a reminder that I wasn't alone. But sleep didn't come. The image of my burning house kept replaying, each flame a mocking taunt. I thought of Caleb, of the fleeting panic in his eyes during our confrontation. He knew I knew, but he also knew I had no proof. And my parents, they chose him as always. The next day, I took time off work to deal with everything. I couldn't sit in front of a computer screen, pretending to focus on circuit diagrams when my entire world had turned to ash. I drove past my burned-down house, my heart wrenching at the sight of the charred remains of the keepsakes I'd cherished for years. Scattered fragments of blackened debris lay strewn about like pieces of a shattered life. A scorched piece of wood lay alone on the ground. I stopped the car, stepped out, and picked it up, my fingers tracing its rough surface. The pain stabbed deep into my chest like a knife. This wasn't just a house. It was proof of the years I'd poured sweat and tears into, a place where I found peace amidst the family storms. Now it was nothing but blackened memories. I stood there in the late autumn Milwaukee chill, the wind stirring the ashes like restless ghosts. I clenched my jaw, holding back tears. I slipped the piece of wood into my pocket, a silent vow that I would reclaim justice. Not just for the house, but for everything I'd lost. My phone buzzed, snapping me out of my thoughts. It was a text from Serena, a close colleague at work. Julian, heard about your house. You okay? Let me know if you need anything. I gave a bitter smile, touched by her concern, but realizing that the kindness of friends now meant more than any words from my family. I replied briefly, Thanks. I'm okay. We'll reach out if I need to. But I knew I wasn't okay. I was just trying to stay upright, to keep the anger and pain from swallowing me whole. I drove to the office of attorney Evelyn Shaw, a well-known lawyer in the area. Her office was in a small building on Wisconsin Avenue with a modest sign bearing her name. When I walked in, Evelyn, a middle-aged woman with neatly tied silver hair, greeted me with a firm handshake. I'm Julian, I said, my voice trying to mask my tension. Julian, Owen told me about your situation, she said, her voice warm but direct. Sit down. Tell me everything. I sat across from her, recounting it all, the argument with Caleb, Nana Alara's warning, the fire, and the confrontation that night. I told her about the smell of gasoline, Caleb's fleeting panic, and how my parents shielded him. Evelyn listened, occasionally jotting notes, her eyes sharp but empathetic. When I finished, she nodded, setting down her pen. Julian, based on what you've said, this fire wasn't an accident. The smell of gasoline is a clear sign of arson. The police will investigate, but I have to warn you, sometimes they do a half-hearted job, especially without external pressure. I frowned, my heart pounding. Half-hearted? What do you mean? She sighed, her gaze serious. The police have too many cases, and unless there's clear evidence or public pressure, they might label this an accident and close it quickly. If you want justice, you need to gather more evidence, security footage, witnesses, anything that places Caleb at the scene. With enough, you can push the police to act, or even take this to court. Her words were like a splash of cold water, but also a glimmer of hope. I nodded, my voice firm. I understand. I'll find evidence. Evelyn gave a faint smile and handed me her business card. If you need legal advice, call me, but be careful. If your brother is as dangerous as you say, you need to stay safe. I left her office, feeling both empowered and weighed down. Evelyn had given me a direction, but it also reminded me that the road ahead wouldn't be easy. I needed evidence, and I needed someone to help me find it. That's when I thought of Investigator Marcus Bell, the private investigator Owen had mentioned. Sitting in my car, I took out my phone, took a deep breath, and dialed Marcus Bell's number. My heart pounded as the phone rang. We spoke briefly, and Marcus agreed to meet me at a coffee shop on Lincoln Avenue. The next morning, I arrived at the cafe. I sat in a corner, turning my coffee cup in my hands, eyes fixed on the door. Marcus Bell walked in right on time, a tall, lean man in his middle years, wearing a worn leather jacket and a baseball cap. His eyes were sharp, as if he could see through every secret. "Julian?" he asked, his voice low but friendly. "Yeah, that's me," I replied, standing to shake his hand. His grip was firm, like someone used to handling tough cases. We sat down, and I told him everything. The argument with Caleb, Nana Alara's warning, the fire, and the confrontation that night. Marcus listened, nodding occasionally, jotting a few notes in a small notebook. "Gasoline, threats, and your grandmother is a witness," he said calmly. "That's a good start, but not enough to press charges. We need evidence." I nodded, though I knew it wouldn't be easy. "Can you do it?" I asked, my voice slightly trembling. Marcus gave a faint smile, his eyes confident. "I've handled tougher cases than this, but you'll need patience." "Thank you," I said, my voice hoarse. "I just want the truth." Marcus nodded and handed me his business card. "I'll start right away. Give me a few days to check security cameras and talk to neighbors. I'll be in touch." I left the cafe feeling as if a weight had been lifted from my shoulders, though the pain remained like an unhealed wound. I drove to a small apartment complex near my workplace, where I had just rented a temporary unit. The apartment was small and plain, with bare white walls, but it was a place to start over. The days that followed, I tried to live normally, but sleep remained elusive. Each night, I tossed and turned, haunted by images of the fire, Kayla's mocking laugh, and my parents' cold stares. But I also received messages of support from friends and colleagues, Serena, Owen, and a few others. They called, checked in, invited me to dinner, reminding me that I wasn't entirely alone. For the first time, I realized that family wasn't just blood, it was the people who truly cared about me. A week later, Marcus called. "Julian, I've got something," he said, his voice calm but promising. "A camera at a gas station near your house caught Caleb and 2 friends buying gasoline that night. And a neighbor's security camera recorded his car's license plate driving through the neighborhood before the fire. It's not enough for court yet, but it's a good start. Want me to dig deeper?" I gripped the phone, my heart racing. "Keep digging, Marcus," I said, my voice firm. "I want the truth, the whole truth." Marcus agreed, and I hung up. In the days waiting for Marcus's results, I kept working, dealt with insurance paperwork, and cooperated with the police, though their sluggish pace drove me up the wall. Occasionally, I got texts from Martha pleading, "Julian, come home. We need to talk." But I didn't respond. I couldn't go back to a place where the truth was buried. I thought of Caleb, how he destroyed everything I'd built, and how my parents always chose him. But I also thought of Nana Alara, Owen, Marcus, and the people standing by me. They were my strength, my reason to keep going. I stood in front of the mirror in my new apartment, staring at my weary face. I was no longer the patient boy, the older brother who always sacrificed. I was Julian, a man determined to reclaim justice, not just for the house, but for myself. The photo of Nana Alara and Grandpa on the table was a reminder. I wasn't alone, and I would fight. Thanksgiving, the day families gather, would be the moment I unveiled Caleb's true face to those who always shielded him. I gripped the photo through my jacket, the worn edges feeling like a vow, and stepped out the door, carrying an anger honed into cold determination. In the days leading up to Thanksgiving, I worked tirelessly with investigator Marcus Bell. He sent me copies of videos from the gas station camera, capturing Caleb and 2 friends buying gasoline the night of the fire. The footage was grainy but clear, Caleb in his familiar gray hoodie, holding a gas can, his eyes furtive like a guilty man. I also had a statement from Mr. Davies, a neighbor who saw Caleb's car drive through the neighborhood just before the fire erupted. And Marcus's report, a concise but sharp document, outlined the timeline and evidence linking Caleb to the fire. It wasn't enough for court yet, but it was enough to shake the wall of protection my parents had built around him. Thanksgiving arrived, and Milwaukee was bitterly cold, the wind carrying the breath of winter through the streets. I drove to my parents' house, hands gripping the steering wheel, the file of evidence in the bag on the passenger seat. I wanted them to see Caleb, not as the precious son they indulged, but as the one who destroyed my life. The house was brightly lit, the aroma of roast turkey and pumpkin pie wafting from the kitchen. Laughter and chatter filled the air as if everything was still peaceful, as if my house hadn't been reduced to ashes. I pushed the door open, dressed simply but neatly, clutching the bag with its damning evidence. Martha was setting the table, her face lighting up when she saw me, but it quickly shifted to worry when she noticed my stern expression. "Julian, you're here," she said, trying to sound cheerful, but her eyes wavered. "Come in. The food's almost ready." Arthur sat at the head of the table carving the turkey and looked up at me. "You're right on time," he said, his voice calm, but his eyes wary as if sensing a storm approaching. Caleb appeared at the stairs, his hoodie sloppy, smirking when he saw me. "Oh, the great big brother's here," he said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "Come to ruin Thanksgiving." Nana Alara, sitting in her wheelchair at the corner of the table, looked at me with a steady gaze, as if she knew why I was there. I took a deep breath, set the bag on a chair, and stood tall. "I'm not here to eat," I said, my voice low but firm, resonating in the suddenly silent room. All eyes turned to me, the air heavy with the tension of an impending storm. "I'm here to talk about what happened, about my house, about how it was burned down." I locked eyes with Caleb, watching him stiffen, his gaze flickering with unease. Martha stood abruptly, clutching the tablecloth, her voice trembling. "Julian, it's Thanksgiving. Don't make things tense. We're family. Sit down and eat." She stepped toward me, as if to pull me to a seat, but her eyes wavered as if she feared what I was about to say. "Family," I repeated, my voice icy. The pain surged like a wave crashing against my chest. "What family, Martha?" "The family that let me lose everything and still protects the one who did it." I opened the bag, pulling out the file and placing each item on the dining table right in front of the turkey platter. "This is a copy of the gas station camera footage showing Caleb and his friends buying gasoline that night." I slid a printed image toward my parents, Caleb's face clear in the dim light of the station. "This is a statement from Mr. Davies, our neighbor, saying Caleb's car drove through the neighborhood just before the fire. And this is a report from a private investigator confirming every detail." Arthur stared at the table, his face darkening. He slammed his hand down, making the wine glasses tremble, his voice booming. "Julian, that's enough. You have no right to accuse your brother like this. It's Thanksgiving. Do you want to destroy everything?" He stood, pointing at me, his eyes blazing as if I were the one betraying the family. "You don't have solid proof, just this nonsense. Do you want to tear this family apart?" The pain inside me erupted like the fire that consumed my house. "Destroy," I shouted, tears threatening, but I bit my lip, holding them back. "Arthur, I lost everything. My house, my memories, everything I built. Caleb burned it down, and you and Martha are standing here protecting him like always." I pointed at Caleb, my hand shaking with rage. "Tell me, Caleb, look me in the eye and say you didn't do it." My voice broke, no longer under control, but I didn't care. I wanted the truth, no matter how much it hurt. Caleb shot up, his chair crashing backward. "You're crazy, Julian," he yelled, his face flushed, hands clenched. "You've got nothing, just a loser," screaming for attention. But his voice trembled, his eyes darted away, and I knew he was scared. He stepped closer, pointing in my face. "You think you can ruin me? You're nothing. I just wanted you to know what it's like to lose everything like I have." His words slipped out, an uncontrolled confession, and the room fell into a stunned silence. Martha covered her mouth, eyes wide, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Caleb, you!" she whispered, her voice breaking as if her heart had just shattered. She stepped back, leaning against the wall, her hands trembling, her gaze shifting between me and Caleb. She wanted to deny it, to believe her precious son couldn't have done it. But Caleb's words had sliced through the veil of protection. "No, it can't be," she mumbled, but her voice was weak, as if she were trying to convince herself. Arthur stood frozen, his hands still on the table, his face rigid, his eyes wavering between anger and shock. "Caleb, what did you just say?" he asked, his voice low but trembling, as if he didn't want to believe it. He looked at me, then at Caleb, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of doubt in his eyes. Did you really do this?" he asked, his voice breaking, no longer the commanding tone I was used to. Caleb realized he'd slipped, stepping back, breathing heavily. I didn't mean that," he stammered, his eyes wild, but no one believed him anymore. He bolted from the room, shoving Martha aside, and ran up the stairs, leaving the family in stunned silence. Nana Alara, from the corner of the table, looked at me with a steady gaze, her lips pressed tight, as if to say, "You did it." I stood there, my heart pounding, but not from anger, from relief. The truth had come out, even if only partially. But the pain was still there, like an unhealed wound. I looked at Martha, watching her slump into a chair, sobbing into her hands. "Julian, I didn't know. I didn't want to believe," she said, Her voice choked as if she were apologizing, but I wasn't sure what for. Caleb, or the years she'd overlooked me. Arthur remained standing, but his shoulders slumped, his eyes empty. I spoke to him, my voice low, but firm, tears streaming down my face. Arthur, this family was broken the moment you and Martha chose Caleb, leaving me to stand in the ashes without a single word of comfort. I didn't want to destroy our family. I just want justice for myself. I turned to Nana Alara, seeing her nod slightly, her eyes filled with pride. I gathered the file and walked out of the house, Martha's voice calling after me, but I didn't stop. I drove into the night, my heart heavy but also lighter. I had done it. I'd made Caleb reveal his true self, forced my parents to face the truth, but the pain didn't vanish. I thought of Martha, her tears, her shocked expression when Caleb slipped. I thought of Arthur, the collapse in his eyes, no longer the authoritarian father commanding me. And I thought of Caleb, how he fled, but I knew he couldn't run forever. A few days later, Marcus called me, his voice brimming with excitement. Julian, the police just reached out. They've opened an official investigation into Caleb for property destruction. The video, the witness statements, and especially his confession in front of your family have forced their hand. He was summoned for questioning this morning. I gripped the phone, my heart pounding. Really? I asked, my voice trembling with disbelief. What happens next? They'll dig deeper, Marcus replied. There's a good chance he'll be charged. With the evidence we have, Caleb's facing serious legal consequences, but you need to brace yourself. These cases can drag on. I nodded, though Marcus couldn't see. Thank you, Marcus. I don't know how to repay you. He chuckled softly. Just live well, Julian. That's the best repayment. News about Caleb spread quickly through our small Milwaukee community. Neighbors who had always seen my parents as the model of a perfect middle-class family began to whisper. Arthur and Martha let their youngest son burn his brother's house. They always protected that kid. And now look at this. The murmurs were like a cold wind blowing through the facade my parents had built. They lost their standing. No longer the respected couple in the neighborhood. I heard Martha had taken a break from her job at the school, and Arthur avoided the usual neighbor gatherings. They were forced to face the truth. Their blind favoritism had led to disaster. I didn't contact my parents after Thanksgiving. Martha's pleading texts, Julian, come home. We need to talk, kept coming, but I didn't respond. I'd given them too many chances, sacrificed too many years, only to be overlooked. This time I chose myself. I decided to cut ties with them, not out of anger, but because I needed space to heal. I needed to rebuild my life from the ashes, and I couldn't do that while being pulled back into the family's vortex. One afternoon, I visited Nana Alara. She was still at my parents' house, but I knew she was the one person I could never leave behind. I stepped into her room, the soft yellow light casting a glow on her face, now more aged, but still radiant with resilience. She took my hand, her frail fingers trembling but warm. You did it, Julian, she said, her voice weak but filled with pride. You're no longer the child who had to endure in silence. I leaned down, hugging her tightly. I couldn't have done it without you, I whispered, my voice choked. Tears streamed down my cheeks. She patted my back like she did when I was a child and said, You're stronger than you know, Julian. Your grandpa would be so proud. Her words were a beacon, lighting the path ahead, though I knew it wouldn't be easy. In the months that followed, I focused on rebuilding my life. I bought a small house in the Milwaukee suburbs, modest but enough to call home. Each day I went to work, immersing myself in my job, finding peace again in numbers and wires. Serena and Owen became indispensable friends. Always there, inviting me to dinner or baseball games, reminding me that I had a new family, not of blood, but of people who truly cared. Caleb, according to Marcus, was charged with property destruction. The trial was still ahead, but with the mounting evidence, I knew he couldn't escape the consequences. I didn't feel triumphant, only a bittersweet relief. Caleb had dug his own grave, and I had only done what I should have done long ago, stood up. One evening, I sat in my new home, looking at the photo of Nana Alara and Grandpa on the table. I thought about my journey from a boy who endured, always trying to please the family, to a man who dared to face the truth, no matter how painful. I thought about Nana Alara's lesson, now clearer than ever. Sometimes the danger isn't out there, but within the family itself. But justice and dignity belong to those who dare to stand and fight. On a quiet night, I sat in my new home. The soft yellow light illuminated the photo of Nana Alara and Grandpa on the table like a beacon shining on the scars in my heart. I thought about my journey from a child who endured, always striving to please the family, to a man brave enough to face the truth, no matter how much it hurt. Nana Alara's words echoed like a clear message. Sometimes the danger doesn't come from the world out there, but from those we love most, those we call family. But justice and dignity belong only to those who dare to stand up to fight, even if it costs them their entire world.